Obviously, what we want to do is we want to recognize or learn how to recognize, and that's part of what we're going to cover today as we talk about the different types of defects. Best advice I can give you, if you take away nothing else from today's presentation, if you realize there's a problem, jump on it. Take care of it immediately. Put the resources that you need to. A couple of years ago, I was teaching this presentation, and one of the builders that was on the front row during the break said, "Mark, is this what you do for a living?" And I said, "It is." He said, "I've got a house I need some help with." This was in July, probably mid-July, and he said, "I will call you the 1st of August. Well, to me, that means the first week of August, because I'm a former builder too, and there's always stuff that comes up, so you have good intentions, but it may take you a couple days. On August 1st, the phone rang at 8:30. Guess who it was? Mr. Builder. And he said, "Can you meet with me at 9 o'clock today?" I said, "No, I have a full day. I can't meet with you today." He says, "Can you meet later?" I said, "No, how about tomorrow?" So we met the following day. He literally called me on the 1st, as he said he would. And he laid out some information on the house and said, "Take care of it. Just fix it." And so I dealt with those issues. But he'd learned one lesson. If you've got a problem, jump on it. He'd been messing around with this house for probably 6 months. And the owner was ticked. She'd consulted an attorney. And it was things that he was going to fix anyway. He should have just put the resources, put it behind him, and moved on. Understand the why and the how. We'll talk about that today. Learn from the event, and then educate everybody involved. Brad, when you have things that go on consistently, you usually will bring your team together, I would suspect, have a roundtable meeting of some kind, and talk about how to fix that problem, and then instruct everybody going forward, including your staff and perhaps trade. Is that correct? And that's what we need to do. That's just good business practice. I think it was you, Brad, or John, one of you said defects can be costly. They are costly. Especially the bad ones, and they can be avoided. That's the thing that's so interesting. As Jim Collins said, it really is pretty simple. Defects, for the most part, can be completely avoided, or so much so that they no longer become a burden to us, and they're dealt with easier. So we need to increase our understanding of the causes of construction defects, and we'll talk about that. Focus on the details. Many of us are so busy and we're so overwhelmed, especially in what I call the new world of building. We're leaner in terms of staff. We're doing more, aren't we? And so sometimes it's just overwhelming. But if you'll take time to plan and think things through, many times we feel like we don't have time to stop and think about what needs to get done and prioritize that, and yet that's the best thing for us to do. And we're all guilty of it. I teach it, preach it, and yet I'm guilty of it too sometimes. We simply have to make time every day to do that. My best superintendent that I ever had work for me was probably the most gifted person in the industry I've ever come across in terms of that concept. Every single day he was ready before the day started because he'd done it the night before. When he finished the day, he knew what houses he needed to go see, he needed what problem areas he needed to correct, he'd already made phone calls, he knew who he needed to follow up with. And on Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings, if necessary, he would get up early. Some of you are early risers, I suspect. And he would make sure that everything was planned out that needed to happen and that he was on top of things. And as a result, interestingly enough, he always got bonused more because his house got finished faster. He had less problems. He was just able to carry more load because he spent time that the other superintendent said, "I don't have the time." Well, he would carry more houses than they would, and yet he still had the time to do it because it was priority one for him. If he had to choose between being at a house or planning, planning was priority. And yet there were very few days he didn't get to every single house that he was working on, which is amazing in and of itself. So pay attention. If you're an owner, if you're a key manager, hopefully if you're an employee, you believe in that business is about generating profit. We don't do it just because we want to do it. If that's why we're in business, we probably ought to get out of business. And although for a number of years after the Great Recession, many of us struggled to be able to price things appropriately. In fact, sometimes we seemed like we were bidding at cost or below at times to get work. That has changed a little bit now. But we need to be generating profit. We want to have friendly and healthy houses. Why would I say friendly? Because if things are going well in the home, we have happy homeowners. And happy homeowners are great, great marketers. And we all know the value there. We eliminate warranty issues. I don't know if any of you have warranty responsibility. Dennis, you probably do. I have over the years. Brad, you probably ultimately have some responsibility there. If not, most of it on your shoulders. You've got broad shoulders, so load them down. But it literally will lower or eliminate your warranty if you'll do the things we talk about today. And most of all, it'll avoid a lot of bad PR. All you have to do is, if you're building multiple homes in a subdivision, is have something that goes wrong that you don't pay attention to and fix. And all of a sudden, you will have a lot of discord in the neighborhood. We've all been there. I could tell you stories. In the essence of time, we won't go there, but maybe during the break, I'll share one or two. Now, I've been in the industry a couple of years, as you saw from the opening slide. Probably more than some of you are old, and that's okay. What I've learned in the industry is we all have value and we all can bring things to the table. I learned that early on in my career, and as a construction manager and a VP of construction, I would bring everybody to the table. My employee that had been there a month, the employees that had been there 10, 12 years. And as we sat around that table, there was no head. I would sit somewhere in the middle. We all had equal footing, all had equal say. And I found that some of the best resolutions and ideas came as people were free to share ideas and thoughts. And some of them were off the wall. Some of them were, better. But by discussing them together as a group, we always came out with better outcomes. And then we had buy-in. And it worked really, really well. And the thing I've learned in all the years I've been in the industry is that the challenge we have is communication. At every level, from the top dog all the way down to the sales staff. And if we can improve that one thing, because it's really the lack of communications that bites us. When we talk about defects, it always goes back to a lack of communications, with few exceptions. When we talk about warranty issues, we can trace it right back to communications. Maybe the purchasing department is just not very clear in what we, you're laughing, aren't you? Not really clear in what we're trying to get out to the site. Maybe, and I'll point to you two, maybe the drawings are just plain crappy. There's no details. We're going to talk about that in detail, so I'm glad you're here today. I should say at length, because it is details we're going to talk about. Maybe we aren't giving our trade contractors the information they need to be there when they need to be there in the proper sequencing. And it all comes back to this lack of communications. Could be a bad set of drawings. We talked about that. Poor design elements. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes at length, but that is a problem in the industry that we have. And you'll see some photos today that will blow you away when we talk about poor design elements. Lacking complete or incorrect information, dimensioning. There's only been a couple of homes that I've built, and I've literally been involved in the building of over several, I think about 2,500 homes now. Some of them custom high-end $1 million homes, some of them entry-level. Dimensioning. I can't remember a project where there wasn't a dimensioning issue, some much bigger than others. Like one where we went to put the roof on and nothing was working. And yet the plans, if we built it to the plan, you would think that it would work, and of course it didn't. And we had to modify actually an upper level of a home that was a story and a half. You're all familiar with that style design, where it was stick-framed roof, and to do it the way the plan said, it wouldn't work. We just couldn't do it. Cost me about $7,500 to change it and lift the walls up and to frame it appropriately. Unfortunately, I got stuck with the bulk of it. My buyer, my customer, ended up with a much larger bonus room, and they loved that. They got that for free on me. Plans without adequate details, and we'll get into that a little bit more. We, for a long time, have, and really sharp companies, as I go in to advise them and look at them, I can tell how the rest of their operation is running if I simply go to the architectural department first and look at what the quality of the plans are. And that tells me mounds about the things that we're going to deal with going forward. Maybe it's the labor force. Ever have a challenge there, Brad? Dennis? Maybe you, Kevin? Certainly there's issues. Maybe it's that we've got a language barrier, and many of our trade contractors speak another language besides English. Maybe they speak 2 or 3 languages, but it could be a language barrier and something simply that maybe they don't read specific detail as well as others. And I've seen that be a problem. This seems to be the bigger problem, the ability to interpret the plans. Real quick story, I had a model home, beautiful model home, Rambler here in Utah, and very well decorated. It had great curb appeal. Had a buyer walk in and they literally said, "I want that house." I said, "House isn't for sale, it's our model." He says, "I know, but I want that house." "Okay, I get it. You want the same plan." No, I want the exact same house. I want the same colors. I want the same furnishings. I want it just the way it is. And I said, well, that'll be easy to do. We'll just pull out the spec sheet for the model home and we'll duplicate it. That's a builder's dream, isn't it? Instead of a one-off, you get to do everything exactly the same. Same pad in the carpet, same carpet selection, same faucets, everything the same. So we found them a lot in the subdivision, and away we went. And I got a phone call as we were pretty much wrapped up with the exterior, and the homeowner said, I don't like the house. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't like the house? It's the same house. And he said, no, it's not. I said, yes, it is. No, it's not. You better come look. And she was ticked. So I go out to the job site after hours on the way home, stop by, meet her and her husband there. And I walk up to the house, and I'm looking at it going, this is beautiful. It's a really nice looking house. And I said, help me understand your frustration and what your concerns are. And she said, look at those things on the roof. Well, she's talking about the eyebrows. And she said, that doesn't look like the model. And I look at it and I go, it's pretty close. So fortunately, the model was just around the corner. So we walked over to the model and looked at it and came back, looked again. I thought, I'll be darned, they're different. Same plan, two different framing companies. And because of their style of framing, they had in fact framed the eyebrows differently because they didn't follow the plan. What do you think happened? I had to redo it. And she was pleased after I did it, but until I did it, she was furious, and it cost me some serious money because the interpretation of the plans, and so that's a big issue. And then simply a crew that's lacking in the skills. If you have multiple homes going on, you have an electrician or a plumber, whoever, just name your poison, but you have a different trade contractor and they have multiple crews. We all know that there's a crew we like better. Brad, you probably have your guys fighting for certain crews to be on their job. Which job are they going to go to if you've got 5 superintendents?
This is the one that's ready.
The one that's ready, the superintendent who tends to have things clicking, is the one that's going to get the preferred. And then the other superintendent who maybe struggles with that's going to get kind of the coals or the leftovers. And we have an issue with that because it causes all kinds of problems in the industry. We'll talk about that in depth too, and there's ways to accomplish that.